I think that many people in the room would readily accept the propositions which Professor Polkinghorne and Mr. Beale have made very eloquently, that systems may be probabilistic and are not entirely deterministic, and that to that extent that they're trying to overturn something which is a readily accepted proposition. But in terms of religion filling or dealing with those aspects of reality which science cannot explain, do you not also need to apply the same rationalistic principles, to the extent one can, to those beliefs which you have? If I can give an example, the belief in the resurrection of the body, for example, appears to be, to most, on the basis of most scientific principles, one would expect, an irrational one, a little bit like perhaps putting the cup of water into the fridge to expect it to heat up. How do you explain such tenets of religion, which themselves seem to be counterintuitive or rationalistic, and therefore rather contrary to the principles you espouse as a scientist?
Well, I wouldn't be quite so confident that I knew what was counter-rationalistic. That was the point I was trying to make with saying that the world is surprising. Anyone in 1899 would have thought quantum physics was an absurdity. Now, if we go back to the bodily resurrection, there is absolutely, I think, no natural reason, that's to say, no reason that could be incorporated in a horizontal scientific story of the unfolding of present process to believe that there is a destiny beyond death. But I believe that's not the only story to tell. There is also, if you might say, a vertical story of God's faithfulness. And if there is a faithful God who will not allow anything of good to be lost, then there opens the possibility of there being a destiny beyond death. And to me, it's attractive that traditional Christian thinking has seen that in terms of death and resurrection. That is to say, re-embodiment. We are not apprentice angels. A mere spiritual survival is not a truly human survival, in my opinion. We need to be re-embodied, not, of course, in the flesh and blood of this world, otherwise we would just become alive again in order to die again. So this is a sort of sketch, very, very brief and inadequate, obviously, of the sort of rationality that I think would lie behind that. And then you have to have reasons for believing that the fact of God being faithful, and you also, if you're a Christian, have to have reasons for believing the certainly counterintuitive fact of Jesus being made alive again in history.
I think if we go back to this burned musical score, if we burned the last score of a piece of music and there was no physical record of it left in the world, then that would be the end of that piece of music on a purely naturalistic basis. But of course, if there's a God who likes, loves, and remembers that piece of music, then there's no reason why God can't then cause that music to be played, as it were, in heaven. And similarly, when our bodies die and decay, that is the end of us in the physical world on earth. But if there's a God who knows and loves us, there's no reason why God can't, in some sense, reinstantiate this active information or the essence of it in another way. Just as, we were playing a CD of the Mass in B minor. It would never have occurred to Bach that it was even possible to put the Mass in B minor on that strange CD or in the computer. He'd have been fascinated, but it's completely different from what he originally wrote or conceived, and yet there is the essence of the Mass in B minor is there. And that's the kind of thing that we believe is certainly a possibility, and we believe a reality in the resurrection.
Well, I've indicated one reason why is that I believe there is a faithful God, and then to spell out why I believe that is something I can't do in a couple of sentences. It would be unreasonable to expect it.
I think you need to invite them back to give part 2 of this, where they've been dealing with the limits of science rather than... Oh, yeah, the question there.
There's more in the book.
Yes.
Mr. Beale, I liked your musical analogy. It made me think of 2 things. One was a fairy story by a French author, Antoine Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince, and that the essence being, for those who haven't read it, that something in the universe, a materialistic object in the universe, has meaning only according to what is given to it by a human interpretation. And the second thing is a GCSE level analogy in maths. You have y as a function of x. So y is the intelligence that gives x a meaning. And out of y equals function of x, you have a plane or a curve. And from that, you can rotate it and you can have z as a function of x, such that if you take away the y, you are still left with another function. So out of one plane, you get meaning in another. And I come back to your, to the essence of what you were saying, that science is the vehicle that gives another meaning, a metaphysical meaning, a meaning in another dimension, a religious meaning, such that when you take away the science, you still have the meaning. You still have the idea.
I'm not sure whether science itself gives meaning. I mean, I think science is just an amazing exploration of certain really important aspects of reality, but it's not the whole of reality. And as you say, the interaction of science and meaning and art is extremely subtle.
You could Fourier analyze the mass in B minor till you were blue in the face, but you wouldn't. Something would have slipped through the net.